We're live. All right. Well, welcome to the first episode of Paul Davis Uncancelled, the freedom fighting lawyer for patriots. I have so many of you out there reaching out to me for legal help fighting the tyranny you're facing. All right, hold on. We're having some technical difficulties. Britt.
Discussion, action, consideration, and possible action regarding board responsibilities, investigation, evaluation of board members to include Chad Green. As I stated before we went into closed session, as was appropriate,
This is the first episode.
board members were not made aware of any of.
Thank you. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So we're starting over. All right. So welcome to the very first episode of Paul Davis Uncancelled. As a freedom fighting lawyer for patriots, I have so many of you out there reaching out to me for legal help in fighting the tyranny you're facing. And the story of my fellow freedom fighters often go untold. I started this podcast to tell the shocking stories of patriots across the country who are taking a stand. And as the great Steve Bannon says, courage is contagious. And my hope is that these stories will not only anger you into taking action, but will inspire you to stand. Freedom does not come without sacrifice. What if our founding fathers had just said, you know what? I'm good with tyranny. I'm totally fine with King George exploiting and oppressing the 13 colonies. And I'm just going to keep my head down and pay my outrageous taxes to a tyrannical dictator across the Atlantic. I shudder to think what the world would have been like for the last 250 years. America was the first country in the history of the world to be founded on the idea that our rights come from God, not the government. Prior to the founding of America, all of mankind had lived in relative slavery to dictatorial monarchs. A true government by consent of the governed, where the people are sovereign, had never existed. Our Declaration of Independence was a radical document declaring that all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Right now, we're at the most critical point in American history. For decades, radical Marxists have been carrying out a comprehensive plan to destroy America from within and bring about a communist revolution. These radicals buy into the satanic idea that humans have no individual intrinsic value and that each of us are merely pawns of the state, cogs in the wheel of the great collective, as they call it. We're all supposed to strive and sacrifice together for the greater good. While that may sound like a good thing, which is what they want you to believe throughout history, everywhere communism and socialism have been tried, it turns out that the greater good is merely a euphemism for handing over totalitarian control over every aspect of your life to an elite ruling class who supposedly knows better than you how you should live your life. These related and connected ideologies have caused the brutal death of over 100 million people dating back to the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 in Russia. That revolution led to a communist dictatorship under Vladimir Lenin that killed millions by starvation and torture in gulags set up all over the country. Communism metastasized across Asia into countries such as China, Vietnam, Korea, and into the Eastern European countries that eventually became part of the Soviet Union. Soon, communist revolutions came to North America. The Castros took over Cuba. The Sandinistas took over Nicaragua. Chavez came to power in Venezuela, and life in these once prosperous and developing countries turned into a living nightmare. Venezuela is particularly disturbing because its devolution has been so recent. Once a flourishing, prosperous, mineral-rich nation, starvation is now common across the country, where people are literally forced to eat stray dogs off the street. Political dissidents with the courage to speak their mind are rounded up and thrown into political prisons to be tortured. Now, American Marxists are implementing the Venezuelan model to finally bring down America, which stands as the last refuge of freedom in the world. If America falls to a communist revolution, it will plunge the world into slavery to the elite globalist class for a long, long time. Every aspect of your life will be under surveillance. You will have no rights. You will have no voice. Propagandizing our children to destroy the nuclear family has been a major initiative for the Communist Party USA, and they have been highly effective. You see, children, if they are raised in a strong nuclear family with a mother and father who teach them the ways of God, that makes a communist revolution impossible, because people who believe in God and know their rights come from God cannot be easily controlled. One way the left has been trying to destroy the nuclear family is by grooming our children to become gay or transgender or to engage in otherwise destructive and ungodly sexual behavior. For decades, the radical left has been quietly taking over school boards to brainwash our little boys into thinking they're actually little girls and vice versa. Our children are actively encouraged to question their gender and sexual preference and choose traditionally sexually deviant lifestyles that result in the destruction of the nuclear family that is God's model for child raising. Today, I'm excited to have a fierce pro-family activist on my show whose courage to stand up against the LGBTQ plus propaganda being forced on our children. He is so fearless and outspoken in his efforts that he has caused leftists to suffer rage blackouts wherever he speaks the truth. Recently, I personally watched police drag Kevin Witt out of the McKinney, Texas school board meeting for speaking against pornographic books. Kevin also spoke at UNT this past week in front of a bunch of radical liberal students who you'll see in the video clips we'll share, or hopefully we'll be able to share with that. We've been having technical difficulties with that. But they appeared ready to stone you to death, Kevin. So we're also going to be joined later by a couple mama bears who are leading the charge to protect our children in the McKinney public school system. And before I introduce Kevin, just a quick shout out to one of our show sponsors. Huge thanks to Mighty Well Health. These guys are revolutionizing health insurance. And this is a word from our sponsor, Mighty Well Health. Is the healthcare system working for you? Millions of Americans feel they have lost control over their own healthcare as policies like Obamacare have put bureaucrats in the driver's seat instead of patients and their doctors. At its core, Obamacare is flawed, expensive, and ultimately takes away your healthcare freedom. Not only are patients feeling the pain, but doctors, nurses, and employers are also seeing how this convoluted system is hurting everyday Americans. Americans want healthcare that empowers the patient-doctor relationship, their choice of a personal doctor, affordable premiums, transparent, affordable medical procedural costs, and health coverage that easily moves as job changes occur. I personally have health insurance through Mighty Well. It's amazing how much money I've saved on my healthcare. I get a cash price for my healthcare. I get a check from Mighty Well's carriers to pay for it, and then some. Oftentimes, my coverage amount is actually greater than the cost of my healthcare, and I get to pocket the difference. It's pretty incredible. So if you want access to healthcare you can afford, especially if you're self-employed like me and can't get covered through an employer, visit www.getmightywell.com/uncancelled. That's uncancelled with 2 L's. That's getmightywell.com/uncancelled. And now I want to bring on Kevin Witt without further ado. So Kevin, go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience and kind of just tell them briefly about who you are and how you came to be a family rights activist.
Hi, I'm Kevin Witt. I have been a pro-family activist for about 4 years now, and I really had no desire to be in politics. I actually thought politics was quite boring. Prior to becoming a activist, I was a evangelist, and I would go out to the streets to all the LGBT parades and tell the truth about Jesus Christ. And so one day I went to an event they were having on the Capitol steps in Austin, not even knowing it was political or anything like that. And whenever I did, I heard the story of Jeff Younger, his son, being transitioned to the opposite gender he was born, and he was only 6 years old. And I was shocked to know that this was happening to children in Texas. Texas is supposed to be the most conservative mecca of the United States, and it's not. And I've only realized that it's not after living here and seeing with my own 2 eyeballs what's happening. The reason I'm passionate about this subject is because I myself used to live as a transsexual woman for 20 years. I was a huge gay activist, was all in the gay pride parades and stuff, and even was a adult sex worker for many years. And so, but the difference with me is I chose to be a transsexual, and I was an adult. I was like 16, 17. These 6-year-old kids that are saying that they identify as the opposite gender that God assigned them is absolutely insane to me. I mean, they don't even know what they want to eat for breakfast. They can't get a tattoo, but they can decide what gender they want to live as for the rest of their life, and take hormones and do all this stuff that's going to permanently alter their body. It's just crazy. So that's why I do what I do. That's why I'm passionate about what I do. And I'm a very bold person, always have been. So I don't mind speaking the truth. A lot of people in the Republican Party on the conservative side, they're very about being politically correct and diplomatic, and I'm not. I think you don't get anywhere doing that. So
Well, I appreciate about that about you, Kevin. What was it that caused the change? Like, how did you get out of that lifestyle?
well, it's through Jesus. But also I want people to know I was not looking to change my life. I was not miserable, I didn't think, in my life. I had fun. I mean, I partied a whole lot, and I that's what I did. That's all I knew. I didn't know anything different. Like I said, I came out at 15 and I started dressing as a girl at 16, living as a girl about 17. So I didn't know anything different than that life. And so um one year I had 6 friends die from different reasons, some from HIV, some from drug overdoses, and some from suicide. And it was all in Dallas. And so I decided one day I just needed to move and get away. So I literally chose a spot on the map. I was going to go to San Francisco. It was way too expensive. So I chose Fort Lauderdale, Florida, because it was close enough to Miami, but it wasn't as dangerous as Miami. And I went there, and as soon as I got there, I got a job working in a strip club. It was a gay strip club. I was the dance manager. I told the boys which stages to go to, because they rotated stages throughout the night. And one night, this little boy that I had befriended and gotten to know, he asked me if I wanted to go to church with him tomorrow. We were drunk as I don't know what, and the last thing on my mind was church. But I said yes, and I was like, sure, I'll go to church with you. Thought it was just drunk talk, had no idea that it was going to really happen. But the next day he called me and he was like, hey, I'm here in your driveway to get you. So I threw on my girl clothes and I went out the door to go to church. And I went to a huge mega church, Calvary Chapel in Fort Lauderdale. And I did not get saved that day, but it planted a seed in my heart. And so from then on, anytime I was depressed or anything, I would think about, maybe I should give God a try. Maybe this Jesus thing really will work. Like maybe there's something more to life than just going to gay bars, having sex with random people, getting wasted, and partying all the time. So that's it. Just happened over a period of time.
Wow. So I guess you can find Jesus being drunk at a party, right?
Yeah. Hey, he can use a donkey. He can use a stripper.
That's right. So from that point, then when did you start getting into political activism and family rights activism?
Well, like I said, from then I got saved. I enrolled in Bible college at Christ for the Nations Institute. From there, I had this desire to be an evangelist. I felt like that was my calling. So I got really plugged into my church, upper room, and I started going there. For 7 years, I went there, and within the church, we would do outreaches and stuff. Through CFNI, I would do outreaches and stuff. And so me and a friend just started our own outreach, doing our own ministry, just going specifically to gay pride parades. And then, like I said, I went to the Capitol that day. And it was about 4 years ago. And I heard the story of Jeff Younger's child being transitioned. And I felt that day. So I randomly went to the Capitol. They were having like worship at the Capitol, which is probably what drew me there. Then we went to they were talking about lobbying people's offices and stuff. I had no idea what that was. But when I heard Jeff's story, I just went to Jeff and I said, anything that I can do to help you, I want to. And my first name is James and his son's name is James. And so I just really felt like that was God telling me that I needed to speak up and be a voice for this day and age, to speak out for these kids that are being harmed by indoctrinators and groomers.
I love that.
So, and this was 4 years ago. It was not a popular thing. Like people, even some Republicans, whenever I told them, hey, we have to stop pediatric gender transition, they were like, well, we have to choose our battles. And That's just not a battle we're ready for. And I'm like, but it's here. Children are being abused. And so then whenever me and Tracy and Jeff started really talking about it a lot, it became very popular all over the news, all this stuff. And then everybody like hopped on board. And now, you know, me and Tracy, we have an organization called Culture Warriors of America. But there's so many of these other little groups popping up here and there and everywhere. And it's like they're grifters. They want to jump on the bandwagon. Do they actually care about kids? No. Where have they been for the last 4 years? Nowhere. They haven't been at the Capitol. They haven't been going to sessions. They haven't been helping us. They've been nowhere. And then they're going to hop on at the last minute.
Well, can you give us what's the latest on the Jeff Younger situation? If you just joined Jeff Younger, you know, his wife brought a divorce or a family law proceeding against him to force their son to become a girl. And the judge ruled in the wife's favor in order that he be transitioned. What's the latest on that case? Do you know? Well,
yeah. So first of all, Jeff Younger has 2 twin boys. Now, these children were birthed out of in vitro. So are they technically the moms? Not really. They're technically Jeff's kids. But the mother, so let me tell you a little bit of history about her, Ann Georgelis, who is a pediatrician, has a practice in Coppell. She
his wife?
His ex-wife.
His ex-wife, yeah, ex-wife.
Yes, she has a practice in Coppell. Now, her mom was a Lutheran minister, but was very LGBT, gay pride Lutheran minister. And her brother was gay, and he died of HIV. So I really feel like this has been like some way an homage to the brother and the mother, because they're both dead now. But so Jeff had 2 twin boys, James and Jude. And she decided that James, because Jude was like more stronger and more, she decided she wanted to raise James as a little girl. Only because when he was 3 years old, they went, I forgot where, some store, and he picked out a girl's toy. Well, how many 3-year-olds pick out girls' toys? Like a lot. And they don't even think of gender. Like, you know, and so she's like, oh my God, this must mean that he's supposed to be raised as a girl. He's supposed to be a little girl. And so she started doing this transition, socially transitioning then. And then he started, when he got into kindergarten, he went to kindergarten as a little girl with dresses on. And Jeff was like, I'm not having it. And so Jeff was, you know, because he's a very orthodox man. That's his religion. So he was like, no, I'm not having it. I'm not raising my son as a girl. Not having it. So they got a divorce. So she continued on this process. During this process, she trashed Jeff for any and everything she could find to make him look like he was a bad person.
Yeah.
He
typical narcissist manipulation, and she's just basically using the child against him and just kind of forced this on him, and then got the court to do the same.
And they've been going through this battle in the court for years. Jeff has spent, I don't even know, over $1 million fighting this this case. And he's still, because his case has been going on for like 5 years. He's still, and one year the judge ruled 50-50 conservatorship. Well, then somehow, some way, Anne was able to get it put into another court with another judge, and that new judge, Judge Mary Brown in Dallas, she ruled against Jeff completely. So now his kids have been taken away. He gets 1 or 2 visits a month, but they have to be supervised, and it's only for like 2 hours. And so that is what's going on. But the good thing about Jeff Younger is he's a fighter, and he is running for state rep in House District 63. So if anybody knows anybody in House District 63, which is in the Flower Mound area, vote for Jeff Younger coming up The 16th to the 20th is the early election, or early voting. The 24th is election day. And Jeff is running against this other man, Ben. And we've got the establishment, Drew Springer, all these people attacking Jeff left and right. And so we need all grassroots patriots on the ground helping Jeff to get elected.
Wow. Yeah. I just, that's so hard to believe that a judge in the state of Texas would take a man's son away from him and turn in order that he be turned into a girl. I mean, how is this happening in America, much less in Texas? It's shocking. Exactly. It is just crazy. So recently, just to change gears here, and I know you speak with Jeff Younger. He actually had an event at UNT not too long ago. Were you there at that event as well?
I was supposed to go there to that event, but I got the days confused. And I thought it was the next day, and it was, so I didn't make it.
Wow,
but yes, I was supposed to be there.
Friend, considering we had to reschedule this podcast 3 times.
I need an assistant.
Yeah. So this is University of North Texas. And then you did an event. You had an event last week. Can you tell us what that event was for and kind of what happened there?
At UNT?
Yeah.
So UNT, the YCT, Young Conservatives of Texas, invited Jeff Younger to come and speak about a month ago. And whenever he did, UNT is like a breeding ground for communist, leftist ideology. And they have got these kids so brainwashed that it's just mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. And so whenever Jeff went there, they the whole time was calling him a fascist, yelling, screaming, spitting on him and everything. Kelly Neidert, who was the president of YCT, had to go hide in a closet and all this stuff. So then they were like, well, we're going to have Kevin and Tracy come because I am a former transsexual. Tracy, her husband transitioned, her ex-husband, to a woman. And so we went there to go speak. And these kids, first of all, YCT tried to get a permit through the college. They turned it down because
Young
of me.
Conservatives of Texas, is that what YCT
Young
is?
Conservatives of Texas. Now, they've had this group for several years. They've never been denied a permit for any speaker. But because I was there, they denied me. Because they started putting flyers all over the campus saying that I was a traitor, and I tried to overthrow the government.
Well, hey, welcome to the club. You're in good company. So they were talking about you were at January 6th too, right?
Yes. And so whenever I was showing up to go, all these kids were like, you tried to overthrow the government. And I'm like, do I look like me by myself? I can overthrow the government. I mean, like, first of all. Second of all, and they were like, did you go in the Capitol? I said, no. Well, did you have a gun? Absolutely not.
It's like, you're an idiot. Had guns at the Capitol. Like, it's insane.
Like, I don't think anybody had a gun.
Yeah.
But,
so crazy.
Yeah. So then they were like, oh, you're a bigot, a racist. Every word you could think of, started screaming at me. And then this one girl, like, she pulled up her shirt and was like, I had my breast removed. I'm a man. And I said, no, you're a woman that chopped your breast off.
I heard that. Actually, Brittany, do we have that video ready? The UNT video? It's okay if you don't. We've been, I apologize. We've been having technical difficulties with the videos, but maybe we do. Oh, looks like we do.
I'm going to do my very best to get this going.
But yeah, so, while she works on that, yeah, so these kids, like, they were literally, they think they have been brainwashed to believe, and it's indoctrination, that it is okay for a child as young as 6, 5, 4 to transition. They think that's okay. Yeah. They think, what they told me is these parents are doing the best they know how to raise these kids this way.
Wow, that is so crazy. Well, unfortunately, we don't have the video. Apologize. Sorry, thanks for bearing with us. Our first episode here. We'll figure that out next time. But I mean, you ought to see it. Like, if you go on to the audience, if you go on Current Revolt on Instagram and go to their Substack link in their profile, you can see this UNT. Actually, it's on their main profile, but you can see these leftist students they're like foaming at the mouth, just like going insane because Kevin.
They start screaming like banshees. Like, I mean, I'm thinking this person is going to have a heart attack any minute because they go insane. It's actually kind of fun to watch because they're so triggered by nothing. And then it's like all of these like black guys who are very macho black guys, probably in some kind of sports at UNT, which these same guys, when they were alone with their friends, their other guy friends, they would probably never be pro-gay or anything like that. But because this is a social issue, they're like, yeah, we are fighting for trans rights. And I'm like, no, you don't care about trans rights. I know you don't.
I know. It looked like a bunch of football players, like,
yeah,
were like dancing around and like dancing for gay rights. So I was like, wow.
Yeah, I'm like, whatever. What's your homeboys gonna think about you when you go back and try to talk to them like you were out there dancing for gay rights, whatever. But yeah, so these people are insane.
It looked like they were chanting from a balcony, F Kevin.
But oh yeah, they were. They started saying F Kelly first.
Oh, they thought your name was Kelly, I guess.
No, because Kelly was Kelly Neidert, the president of YCT, and she was talking first. And then they said, we're gonna bring up Kevin Witt to speak, and they all started saying F Kevin. I mean, and from a balcony. Then they came down there. Look, and then a few days before that, I went to the campus because they were having trans pride, and I went with Kelly. As soon as I walked onto the campus where that trans pride event was, everybody saw me, and these kids started all like swarming around me. And then the cops were swarming. I mean, it was insane. And it's like they all knew who I was. Like, these kids, they hate me. And they hate me because I shatter their narrative that people are born gay and they don't choose to be gay. They think everybody is born gay, and I'm not. It's not true. People choose to be gay. Whether they are gay because of the effect, I think that it's the effects of things that happen in their childhood. It's still a choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you can choose to not have sex. Is what you can choose.
I know, so, right? It's and now we have the abortion debate going on like never before in this country, and it's that concept that you can actually choose whether or not to have sex. You can choose whether or not to use contraceptives. You can make a lot of choices. You can choose to give a baby up for adoption. So I'm not anti-choice. I'm just saying you can't choose to murder your unborn child.
Exactly. When they were swearing in Amy Coney Barrett, I was there in front of the Supreme Court that night, and I told everybody, I am pro-choice. You have the choice to close your legs.
Exactly. So let's transition, not to use that word, no pun intended, to what's going on with the McKinney ISD. So just to give a little background on this, Rachel Elliott, who's going to be on here in a few minutes, reached out to me a few weeks ago to come meet with her and Chad Green, who is the lone conservative on the McKinney ISD school board, who is trying to get these pornographic books removed. And, I'll let Rachel tell about how she discovered these books, but apparently there are 282 approximately pornographic books or books containing just sexually explicit material. And Rachel's actually going to read a passage from one of those books and describe one of the illustrations. It's pretty graphic, so we won't actually show it on the podcast. That's how bad this is. We can't show the book on the podcast because we might get in trouble for distributing child pornography, but it's okay to have it in the library. That's the crazy world we're living in right now. So I, met with Rachel and Chad, found out everything that's going on. The McKinney ISD school board has launched a witch hunt into Chad. They interviewed him and asked him, like, this whole thing is about the fact that he had an event at a school where he did this robotics demonstration, and somebody from a political group named McKinney First PAC, actually Rachel, brought some pamphlets just showing who the volunteers were. They had volunteers there from McKinney First PAC, and they're trying to say that just because they had a pamphlet talking about who the PAC is and what they stand for, that Chad Green is somehow campaigning, even though the pamphlets didn't mention him, didn't mention any political candidate, didn't mention any political party, didn't mention any political measure on a ballot, which is what's required, under law for electioneering and under the election code. But they're trying to pin all this on him like he did something horrible because Rachel brought pamphlets to a school event, and they launched a whole investigation into him on that basis because somebody else brought a pamphlet that's not even an election-related pamphlet. So that's what your tax dollars are being used for in the city of McKinney, to conduct a witch hunt into Chad Green, and we'll get into that a little bit more. But tell me how, because we had the board meeting last, 2 weeks ago, and I feel like I'm still traumatized from that school board meeting. I mean, it was insane. I've never seen anything like it. It was fascism. I mean, that's all I can describe it. And I watched police physically remove you from that meeting. So tell me, why did you come to that meeting? What did you say to the school board? And then what happened? Just tell us about the meeting, your experience there.
Well, my experience at the meeting, I went to the meeting because several parents in McKinney had been asking me to please come, please come, please come. So I said, and they wanted me to come to the one, they asked me to come to the one previous as well, but I was doing something. I was busy that day. So I didn't go to that one. But I told them I will come to the next one. So I was asked to go there, and I live in the neighboring town. I live in Allen. So, it's right there. And so I went over there because I was asked to, and whenever I showed up, and I already knew about the books, because that's another thing that me and Tracy started doing 4 years ago, was telling people, because we were bringing this to attention whenever Drag Queen Story Hour was happening in public libraries. Now they're doing Drag Queen Story Hour in public school libraries as well. And they would read these types of books to the children, but they were doing it in a public library. Well, now they're doing it in the school library, and they started bringing in these perverted books into the school library. Because why? The whole library association is a bunch of groomers. So we started speaking out about this 4 years ago, but we were working on so many issues that this was just, it kind of like we swept it under the rug, because we were working more on pediatric gender transition and the Drag Queen Story Hours. So I already knew about it. So
Wait,
I went there.
They have Drag Queen Story Hour at these schools in McKinney?
I don't know about in McKinney, but they definitely had them in Austin.
I see Rachel shaking her head in the back room now. Okay.
No,
there are schools
they do have them in a lot of schools across Texas, Drag Queen Story Hour, and they definitely have had them in Austin, as well as the librarians are. I could show you stuff from these librarians that would make you sick. They're pedophiles. These librarians, a male pedophile librarian, specifically in Austin ISD, who has not been fired.
Wow.
After we exposed him. Anyway,
how did this even how did Drag Queen Story Hour become a thing? Like, how that just blows my mind. How did that even come into existence? Do you know?
It was an organization out of New York that got all this money donated to them to start this. It was a leftist organization. And so they started this organization called Drag Queen Storytime, and they hired drag queens to travel across the country and do this. And then they also book drag queens that are locally there as well. Drag Queen Story Hour was the first thing I ever did, was protest Dallas. Dallas had Drag Queen Story Hour at the library there. So anyways, these perverted books have been around forever, but parents just now started catching on. So I went to McKinney because I had already been before to Frisco ISD, Dallas ISD, Fort Worth ISD, Salina. And so, but I'd never been to McKinney. So parents asked me to come. So I went. I gave my little spiel. First of all, the lady that's Amy, whatever her name is, Dankel,
Yeah,
she is a communist.
Why do you say Amy Dankel is a
She
communist?
is straight up tyrant. She doesn't want to hear from all of us because we're right-wing extremists, and we are lying about indoctrination. So she limited our testimony to 1 minute. Now, was there a lot of people signed up to testify? Do I think it was a lot of people? No. I've seen these meetings go on until sometime 2 a.m. because they want to give everybody ample time to testify. She limited what can you really say in 1 minute? I had a whole speech prepared. All I could say was, I'm Kevin Witt and y'all are perverts, basically, in the 1 minute. But I said my little speech. I went back to go to where I was standing. First of all, somebody brought it to my attention, I believe you, later on, I could not get into that room. That room was so packed that me and several people were outside of the doors, standing in the hallway. Now, there's an accordion door in the back of that room. She could have easily raised up that accordion door so that everyone could have fit in there. And then when she gave her little tyrant speech about, y'all are going to have just 1 minute and I better not hear a peep out of you, not a hand clap, not a nothing, or you're going to be kicked out. I never heard that part because I couldn't get in the room. Mm-hmm. But if we would have all been allowed to be in the room.
So yeah, I saw her give that spiel, and it was basically just, you're not allowed to clap, you're not allowed to say anything, you're not allowed to make any noise. If somebody speaks and you agree with them, all you're allowed to do is raise your hand.
Yeah.
And so that's what she said. And then you come in, give your spiel, and then what happens?
And then I go back and stand
there.
What
did you say to the school board? What did you say to them? We would have played the video, but again, technical difficulties.
I think, there was a video. I just told the school board, let me think. I said, I told them my story, that I used to be a transsexual. I've been on both sides of this issue. I know that indoctrination is happening in the school board, in these schools. And if you are not standing up against it, then you are for it. So therefore you're a groomer. And I said, all of y'all are groomers, because that's how I feel. Everybody that's not standing up against it, that you are enabling it to happen. So therefore you're just as guilty. And then I said, because a lot of people, whenever they have this discussion, a lot of people are like, even that day, they're like, there is a process to go through to get a book taken out of the school. I don't care about the process. Tell me, who thought it was a good idea to order perverted books for children in school?
Amen.
Who thought that was a wonderful idea? Like, what perverted librarian did you hire that's ordering this, and why are they still employed with you? They should be fired.
Is school librarian now just like that's like the new profession if you're some kind of pervert?
A groomer, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. So that was what I said, and they obviously did not like it.
Yeah, you also said, I do remember you said, why do we even have a romance section?
Oh yes, because
why do we need that in schools? Why do we need a romance
public school libraries? We have a romance section. We don't need to have a romance section. Kids don't need to be learning about romance. I don't care if you're 18 years old or 17 years old. You ain't got no business learning about that at school. Let your parents teach you. Or go to the public library and check out a book in their romance section.
Preach it.
So, but yes, so that was my whole question. I don't care about your stupid ass process. I want to know who allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
Who was the one that ordered these books? Who paid for these books? Because they're the one who is the most guilty.
Well, yeah, and this is actually a federal crime. Like, it is a federal crime to distribute pornography, and that's what they're doing. But you know that Merrick Garland, our attorney general, is not going to prosecute that, and apparently we can't get the district attorney in Collin County to do anything about it either.
No.
So,
And so I know. Somebody said when they were in school, the librarians were prudes. Exactly. When I was in school, the librarians were like these prudish old women that were like, shh, don't say. Now they're like perverts. What's going on? But so I went and I stood back where I was standing, and Rachel read an excerpt from a book that was in their library.
We're going to hear that excerpt here in a minute.
And they said, these people said, oh, that book's not in our library. I knew they were lying because you know why? I checked to see that day right before I spoke, and it was there.
Yeah.
And so therefore she read the excerpt. I said, and I didn't even it was just a natural reaction. I said disgusting.
Yeah, you didn't say that loud. You didn't say that loud. So then what happened?
And then the cops came over there and said, you have to leave. And I was like, for what? They've already at this point thrown out 3 other people. And I was like, why do I have to leave? All I did was say one word, disgusting. And I mean, I wasn't trying to cause a disruption. Well, because you're disrupting the meeting by saying one word. Well, these people over here have been clapping and everything else, and they're still over there. But exactly. They were the blue shirts. I was on a blue shirt. So the blue shirt got to clap.
Right. So for people that weren't there, we were wearing, if you were on Chad Green's side, who is the school board member opposing these pornographic books, you wore green. Everybody else wore blue for some reason. The people that want to keep the pornographic books in school wore blue. And, first, what was kind of awesome, I wish we had the video to play. We'll put them. They're already all on my social media. You can go to @FiredUpTX Lawyer on any of my platforms, and you can watch it. You can find these videos. But you said the police tried to put their hands on you, and you were like, "I'm not leaving. This is the United States of America. I have a right to free speech." And I was like, "Yes."
They put their hands on me to take me out. I said, "Don't touch me. This is the United States of America, and I have free speech." And they were like, still trying to take me out. And I was like, "Do not touch me."
Yeah. And
they drug me out. And another thing, these people didn't know this, but I have a, I could hear you yelling. Well, I was yelling. I'm going to tell you why I was yelling. Because they took me out of that room and they were forcing me to go down the stairs. Well, I have multiple sclerosis. So therefore, when I walk, I took an elevator up because I knew I could not take the stairs because I lose my balance. I definitely, if I'm going to take the stairs, I have to hold on to the railing. They were on both sides of me trying to make me go down the stairs. I said, I cannot go down the stairs. I have to take the elevator. And they were like, just go down the stairs. Wow. I said, so that's why I yelled. And I said, I am not going down the stairs. I am disabled. I cannot. And so then another cop came out there and was like, just go inside, you guys. I'm going to handle this from here. And he was a very nice cop. He allowed me to cool off a little bit and then take the elevator down. And he didn't even go with me. He was like, they were just acting like Gestapo. And so, and that was why I got so mad, because they were basically trying to push me down the stairs. And I kept telling them I have a disability, and they were not listening. They thought I was lying.
Yeah, of course. There's so much more I want to ask you about this, but for the sake of time, let's let in our other guests. So we can talk a little more about the meeting, because both Rachel Elliott and Andie Gonzalez were there. Andie also got kicked out. So can we, keep Kevin in. Yeah. Sorry. That's my producer asking me. So let's get everybody on here so we can talk about what happened at this meeting. So there's Rachel. Hi, Rachel. Thanks for coming on. Hi, Andie. Thanks for coming on. So I want to start with, since we're already talking about what happened at the meeting, let's go to Andie. And so you got thrown out of this meeting as well, right?
Yes, I did. It was pretty awful. I really still have not received any kind of answer as to what I did. I asked them for just cause. They provided none. In fact, after being kicked out, I went down to the officer outside where I was placed, by the way, in a Suburban. And I asked him, what do I do about this? Your officers just manhandled me and they couldn't give me just cause. I asked them if I was being detained. What was I being charged with? What crime did I commit? And they couldn't answer any of these questions, but yet they were still putting their hands on me. And he advised me, and I'm thankful as to what he advised me to do. So I think there's, I've been a big proponent of back to blue.
Yeah, I think we all have been until recently, right?
But I think that's part of the agenda too, is to get conservatives to also start saying defund the police in some way, because if they can get that, then they can have their chaos. So we're just smart enough to not fall for it. We're gonna fight in the way that we know to fight, which is through the law, through lawful action. And so I filed an internal affairs report. Sergeant Ray is.
Well, hold on, let's go for a second. So what were you doing, or do you have a child in McKinney ISD, or what were you doing at the meeting?
So I've been a swim coach and a gymnastics coach for, I don't know, going on 25 years now. So I have several kids that I consider my own, but I do have 3 children of my own that I homeschool. And so I am in Collin County. I'm in Frisco, neighboring McKinney. But just like Kevin, I feel a deep calling from God to just continue to go and speak out. And my story is similar to Kevin's, and we can discuss that later. But basically, when I discovered that there was these explicit books that were being distributed in our libraries to children, I was absolutely just appalled and disgusted. And I'm going to do whatever I can to protect children. I've been a coach. And so, there are McKinney students that I've coached, and there's a lot of Collin County students. So.
Gotcha. And so, so you go to the meeting, and then what happened? Like, why did you get thrown out? What did you do? What did you say? Tell me about that.
So a couple of people, well, first of all, like Kevin said, if they would have opened up that back room, which would have been appropriate for an open meeting, since there were many parents, it was crowded. It was standing room only. I was actually standing outside of the meeting when it started because it was so crowded. And I was prepared to speak. I had my comment card, and I was standing there, and a friend of mine motioned, "Hey, come up here." And I said, "Okay." So I went and got towards the front. I didn't hear the rules, but again, that's like, they're teaching us to obey by their coercion of rules instead of following actual laws. And that's another issue of its own. But
and they didn't even follow the own rules that they set out. They said, you can only raise your hand. Okay, fine. If that's all we can do, let's do that. Well, it's hard. It's a very emotional topic. So, some people, and it's just not, people are used to clapping after somebody speaks, right? So a few people inadvertently clap, and then they get removed, but they were on our side. They were all on, nobody on their side got removed, even though they were doing the same thing.
Exactly.
If you remember, at one point in the meeting, Sam Hall, local militia leader, got up and basically told the school board they needed to be arrested for distributing child pornography, which I completely agree with. They do need to be arrested. Probably the only reason they haven't been is because there's this loophole in the Texas porn, kiddie porn, for lack of a better term, distribution law that, you can keep it for educational materials, or reasons, but who gets to decide that it has educational value,
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, then, so he says that, and then Sam he had another outburst, and he just removed himself before the police could. And so he's walking out, and then everybody in blue claps, every single one of them. And we're all like, you just removed like a bunch of our people for clapping, and so you need to remove all of them. And of course, Amy Denkel's like, oh, they weren't really disrupting the meeting. I was like, well, neither were our people. I mean, this is a violation of our civil rights. I can tell you as a lawyer, Section 1983 in the U.S., 42 U.S.C. 1983, you cannot deprive somebody of their First Amendment right in this situation. Your right to associate, your right to protest, to address the government, with your grievances. And they deprived us, the people on our side, of our First Amendment rights while not depriving the others. So
that's exactly right. I mean, we So there was people that were clapping. It was actually an amen to someone who read a scripture out of Proverbs. I think it was actually a child.
Was it the one where, if you cause these little ones to stumble, you need to tie a millstone around your neck? It'd be better if you have a millstone around your neck and are thrown into the sea.
Exactly. And so there was he said, I don't remember. Well, I know who said it. He said, amen. And I said, good for you. But it was that loud. And other people were clapping. So it was, you couldn't even, I don't even think you could hear my comment. Even if you could, they went after him for clapping. And then they went after his girlfriend. And I just happened to be standing by the girlfriend. And when the police approached her, I said, you don't have to talk to them. You don't have to identify yourself. You don't even have to look at them. Don't contract with them because you have a right to be here. You're in the Open Meetings Act. So I was just very calmly explaining the law to, help to, I guess, kind of just, I don't know, try to dismantle some of the, anxiety that she was feeling, that she may have to answer or whatever. And as soon as I said, she's not interested in contracting with you today, I'm her constitutional advocate, they pointed at me and they came after me. And I said, I'm here to speak. And I pull out my comment card. And I was very calm. And I just said, why are you approaching me? I'm here to speak. And she just grabbed my arm. And that was Officer, I don't even like to call him officer. That was Tyrant Silas. And I don't know the other tyrant's name. But what's interesting is, before entering that meeting, I was out there. Like I told you, I was outside of the meeting because it was so crowded. It was standing room only. I began to have a conversation with one of the officers there, Officer Meyer, Meyer. And I said, officer, do you know why we're here tonight? And he was like, I don't really know. I said, well, let me just I said, can I share with you why we're here? And he said, sure. And I told him about the explicit content that was in McKinney and was in all of Collin County, and that we were standing up against this because our children deserve to have an education free from obscenity, because your First Amendment right does not protect obscenity. We're not calling for banning books. We're not calling for censorship. We're calling for lawful education that's appropriate and age appropriate. And these are minors. And I said, officer, with all due respect, would you look at the book that we're currently protesting and read an excerpt? And he goes, nah, well, and then he says to me verbatim, and I don't want to misquote him, so I had written it down. And he says, these kids are going to learn and visit these sites, and they're going to learn about this stuff anyway. And so I stopped him and I said, sir, are you saying that we should just allow it because they're going to learn anyway? He's like, well, didn't you as if, and I stopped him and I said, you know what? This is the problem. I said, you know what? My 4-year-old, he wants to be a police officer. Should I give him a gun? Because that's exactly what you're saying. I said, they might, my children, they're probably going to drink one day. So I should just give them liquor right now. That's the logic that you're using right now. So this is what you're saying is age appropriate. This is okay. He said, ma'am, I don't really wish to have this conversation with you any longer. And I said, you know what? You should take that uniform off and put something else on, because you don't deserve to be wearing it, because you're not actually upholding law. And, I am bold because, like Kevin, I've been 18 years out of the lifestyle. And yeah, I would say absolutely 100%. It's a choice. It's a slow fade. And really, it's an identity issue, because when you come from trauma and you come from a place of your parents' divorce, like mine did at 3 and 4 years old, and then I go to live with my dad, I grew up in a man's world with my dad and my brother. I want to be like a man. I want to be like my dad. I want to be like my brother. All my cousins are boys. So I just take on this identity because I don't know anything else. My mom did the best she could, but she wasn't around as much as I'm sure she would have loved to have been, but she was ill. She was ill and in the hospital a lot. So I grew up with I would say now I grew up with confusion. I didn't understand who I was, what I was here for. I didn't understand my purpose. And when I saw all the boys around me playing football, standing up to pee, I did the same. Just by, nurture. And there is a very real nature versus nurture issue. And I don't be so long-winded, but I want to give my testimony in a short aspect of, I had very real identity issues, and I didn't learn my identity until I was 22, and I was hitting my rock bottom, and I had a miscarriage because I was seeking revenge against a woman that actually broke my heart. And I went and, did what any stupid 22-year-old is going to do when you have a broken heart. You're going to go do stupid sex stuff. And I slept with a boy, he was 21 and I was 22, and ended up pregnant. And I didn't know it at the time. And I had a miscarriage. And as I was miscarrying for those 3 weeks, all I could think of, there was life in me. There was life in me. I couldn't think of anything else. I couldn't sleep. And that is when I said, okay, God, you're real. You're real. Show up in my life. And within about 6 months, I was working at a coffee shop, and this girl just gave her testimony to me one day about how God changed her life. And it's a lot longer than this, but to keep it short, I ended up working in a homeless ministry as a volunteer, found God while being a volunteer, because I thought, well, I'll just be a good person. That's what I just need to do. I just need to, and I had already given my sexuality to God, because I was like, oh my God, there was life in me. I need to not, God, you know what you created. I don't. I was also an artist. So God kind of punted the question to me like this: hey, Andy, your canvas doesn't tell you what to paint. You, the painter, you get to decide the color, the structure, the line, the form. He said, how about you give me your sexuality and I'll show you what it's for. And I was like, wow. And so God taught me, see women as your sisters and men as your brothers. And from that point on, God truly started a transformation process in me. And I became a new creation in Christ on October 8th of 2003. And it's really just all glory to God. And I would have never seen myself in activism ever. I didn't even know anything about the political process at all. But it was through 2020 that I was like, they can't shut down. They can't lock us down. I had 8 kids in my neighborhood coming to my house the first day of lockdown, because I was like, they're single moms and they don't have their daycare anymore. Come on, you can come over, jump on our trampoline, just bring your kids snacks and we'll have a good time.
Yeah. Wow.
And anyway, sorry, I didn't
think
to go that direction.
No, that was amazing. I mean, it's such a powerful testimony. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. So let's transition to there's that word again. I gotta stop using that.
If we're gonna use the word, use it correctly.
Yeah, exactly, right? We're gonna redeem that word
and age appropriately.
Exactly. Yeah. But wow, I mean, that was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that. God is just amazing how he can just turn lives around. We heard 2 testimonies from 2 people that came out of the transgender lifestyle, and that, praise God for that. So I want to change gears a little bit since we're running a little short on time. I do want to hear from Rachel Elliott, and maybe we'll have some final comments from each person before we sign off here. But Rachel, how did you discover that how did you get involved in this fight? How did you realize there were pornographic books in the McKinney ISD school?
Well, my family loves reading. My daughter is named after one of the characters of the Chronicles of Narnia. Our dog, Scout, she's named after To Kill a Mockingbird. We love books. My husband and I are both named after book characters too.
They're my favorites. I love books.
We love books.
Yeah.
And so my daughter came home with a school book one day from the library. And she and I have talked about stuff of, things that are inappropriate or inappropriate. And she's like, Mom, this isn't right. And I looked at it, and it wasn't, it was definitely inappropriate, but it wasn't pornographic or anything like that. But it made me raise my eyebrows as a mom. And then I looked into the author. And then when I wanted to find out what the author had also written, it kind of just got me down a rabbit hole, and it got deeper and deeper and then darker. And as a concerned, loving parent, it made me continue to look further. So my daughter also wants to be a dentist when she grows up. She's in elementary. And so there wasn't enough dentist books in the elementary school library. So we decided to ask a friend of ours who is the school board trustee, Chad Green, to go to the high school library to see if there were any dentistry books there. And so we go there. We ask the librarian if they had any medical books, just so my daughter could understand it, because we just couldn't keep going to the dentist every 5 minutes and bug our dentist. But anywho, and then I was also kind of curious about, there were some quotes of some obscene books that may be in libraries. And so I was like, oh, well, I hope if they're not here in McKinney ISD, but then I'm just going to look. And so we actually didn't find it at that specific library. We actually had to go to a different, because McKinney ISD has 3 high schools. We had to go to a different high school and then a different high school. And so once we looked into those books, my husband and I made the decision that we would never, have them like laying around the living room or anything like that. We would keep them in the lockbox and things like that. And because we just didn't want our young one kind of getting a hold of it, because she kind of reads everything and anything. She just reads a lot. And so as a concerned parent, we were just just shocked about some of the graphic and awfulness, where it just at this point, I was just like crying almost every day, where I'm like, I felt so sorry for all these 23,000 kids in McKinney ISD, what they were exposed to, what their childhood was being taken away, to a point where I was just like, I didn't grow up in such a way that was kind of caused with a lot of confusion, but I grew up in a wonderful Christ-centered family that I truly appreciate and love. And I want our kids, all of the kids in McKinney ISD, to grow up in a healthy and a loving place. And this stuff is not loving. It's very graphic, and it really concerned me as a parent. And so as things kind of continued to go on, I decided to challenge a book in November of 2021.
Before we get to the challenge, can you give the audience, do you have that excerpt you were going to read so that our audience has an idea what we're talking about here?
So this wasn't the specific.
Watching, take them away. Don't watch this.
Yeah.
Not that the kids want to watch my podcast, but go ahead.
So this isn't the book that I challenged back in November of 2021, but this is an excerpt of one of the books that I read last school board meeting. The book is called Almost Perfect by Brian Ketcher. And definitely it's very hard for me to read, but also definitely if there's little ones 18 and below, please pause this, get out of the room. This is not something for you. And honestly, it's nothing for even adults, because I think it's just downright disgusting. So the book excerpt has the barcode number of 30007000307396. It's in the McKinney ISD school district. They actually have multiple copies. There's one in at least in McKinney North High School, and then also in McKinney Boyd High School Library. And I'm going to start reading from page 100. All right. So for a month, I fantasized about Sage, her cute face, her muscular, athletic body. Now my mental image of her naked body filled me with horror. Big, hairy balls, an 8-inch cock, fat, hairy chest and hairy back, and I had kissed her. No, not her, him. My hands raised gently touched her hips. She was right. Her skin was soft. Her body quaked. Our eyes locked. Sage was smiling with a terrified smile. There I stood, holding a topless woman. I could feel her stomach expand with each breath. She took my right hand in both of hers, her fingers wrapped around her hip, belly, ribs. I kept begging him to stop, but he just smiled, and he said he was going to fuck me up the ass. That book is just completely disgusting, and I have no clue why that book is in the school libraries, let alone allowed to be in the hands of children. It needs to be removed. And honestly, I am very saddened and ashamed that the McKinney ISD is not protecting our children. One of the administration of McKinney ISD has once told me that, that we as parents share our children with them. and that's it. We as parents, we share our love, our love of our children with them, and this is what they're sharing back to us. This is disgusting. This is so wrong in so many ways. And so for me,
are there a lot more, like, is that like the worst one, or are there lots of similar examples?
No, there's more. The one that we first contested back in November taught the boys how to ignore the girls when they were being raped and how to continue on, especially when she was begging him to stop. Also taught the boys which corners to stand in on the cities, so the other men in the cities would come and pick them up.
This was a book. Was it a fictional book or a nonfiction book?
That book is called Perks of Being a Wallflower. And then on December 17th of 2021, McKinney ISD returned our contested paperwork and stated that it was educational value.
What did they say? What was the educational value?
They claimed it was a book that really reflect kids and how they were growing up in their life choices, and it helped them make life choices.
Wow. Yeah, because every kid wants to grow up and be a whore on a corner. I mean, that's crazy.
And then there's just ones that it's just, I could just read more, and it's just, it honestly makes me cry. It really makes me cry where the ISD is not working with us, because I know Andy and Kevin have mentioned how crazy this McKinney ISD school board meetings are, but I've been attending them for over a year now. Mm-hmm. And for over a year, they have not listened to us. Even from the first time when my daughter was threatened in the cafeteria and her life was almost taken, I don't get this, why the ISD is not listening to us.
Well, that was the first school board meeting I have ever been to, and I will never forget it. I mean, I have never been in a situation that was like, I felt like I was in Nazi Germany. I mean, they would not let anybody speak. They were, obviously trying to railroad Chad Green. They had a whole, they had the attorney who is supposedly an independent third-party attorney get up and give his report of the investigation. And, he acted like, he said, Chad Green has, committed a dereliction of his duty because at this event where he did the robotics presentation, he failed to sign the sign-in sheet at the front desk, even though he asked the lady, do I need to show you my ID? And she was like, no, go on back. But he's basically saying like Chad Green needs to be removed from office because he failed to sign his name on the sign-in sheet and acted like that was like a federal, capital crime or something. And then, they said, like the pamphlets. So you remember McKinney First PAC, you were a volunteer at this event. You brought some McKinney First pamphlets that just tell who your organization is. Now, that you're not supposed to electioneer at a school, but I mean, it didn't say anything about supporting a candidate, a political party, or a measure, which is what the law is. And then they acted like Chad Green is supposed to be like, well, Chad Green did nothing about it, did nothing about the pamphlets. Never mind the fact that he's not a member of the McKinney First PAC. He didn't bring the pamphlets. He didn't even know what was in the pamphlets. I mean, he testified to that when I was in when they were investigating him. And, that's just such a stretch to say that was electioneering. And then they said that because he posted pictures on his Facebook from the school event that he had violated this law called FERPA, but all the parents sign a waiver saying if your kid, has a photo taken, then they consent. And then it turns out that every single other of the, this happens in the meeting. They say, well, Chad Green violated FERPA and this is a serious offense and a serious crime. And we're all like, even I was like, maybe this is kind of bad, like I was like, listen to him. And then you texted me during the meeting. You're like, all the other school board members do it. And you gave me all these pictures and stuff. So it's just a witch hunt. And then, Chad, he is entitled to defend himself. And so I go up on stage and try to give him some questions to ask because, they had made it very clear I was not going to talk at the meeting, which I still don't think they can do. I'm still learning all this. I got to take a crash course on education law because it's like, I'm like the only conservative lawyer around. So I have to know like every area of the law, but
we're being attacked at every area of the law.
We are, but it's like, weird. So just for going up on stage to give him some questions to ask, you know, Amy Dangle, the president's like, Mr. Green, you cannot have your attorney on stage, you know, which I'm pretty sure these people just make the rules up as they go along. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's completely arbitrary and capricious, as we would say as lawyers. And it's just, they're just tyrants. In my opinion, watching this school board meeting, I'm like, these are just a bunch of overgrown mean girls. This is like, they're a little popularity club. They won the popularity contest because they got elected to school board, and now they're just excluding people who are not part of their in crowd, which is Chad Green. And how dare parents, you know, call them out for having pornographic books in the school? So they're just not even going to tolerate dissent. Do you think that's accurate? Yeah.
Yeah. Where for us, it's my husband and I. We're good parents. We're concerned parents, and that we want our kids to get what they're promised, which is an excellent education. These pornographic materials are not excellent education. And I think it's just crazy that they aren't removing it when by law they're supposed to. You know, if you look into the document called EF Legal, and you can Google it, you just type in the words EF Legal, McKinney ISD, the first page, second paragraph, last sentence. It states a district may remove materials because they are pervasively vulgar or based solely upon the educational suitability of the books in question. And then if you look into the other document, EF Local, which you can, you know, Google it also, EF Local, McKinney ISD, first page, first paragraph, last sentence, it states, although professional staff members may select instructional resources for their use in accordance to the district policy and administrative regulations, the ultimate authority for determining and approving the curriculum and instructional program of the district lies within the board. The only person who is willing to stand up for these kids is Chad Green, and this is what they're doing to them. And this board is responsible, and I am so frustrated with them to a point where I have been praying for them every single day. I have been hoping and pleading that their hearts will be turned to knowing that they are responsible and that they can easily state, you know what? I'm changing my decision. I want a second Chad Green. I want to put this on the agenda. We need to remove these pornographic books. They should not be accessible to these children. We need to take care of our kids because they are the next generation.
Absolutely. So, you're a better person than me because I've been more, my prayers have been more like David in the Psalms, you know, calling God break their teeth in their mouth, you know, and may their babies be dashed upon. No, I'm just kidding. But David does say that in the Psalms. There's some pretty graphic stuff. But so I wanted to know, because this is not just like printed material. Isn't there like graphic novels with pictures? Like, what's like an example? Can you describe like a picture that like one of the worst pictures you could think of for one of these graphic novels?
The one I remember this. I remember looking into these books because when I contested the 282 books, I had to read all of them. And then there is one.
Wait, you actually read the books. You know, according to Mayor Fuller, nobody who opposes the books, and this is the mayor of McKinney, if you look at his Facebook, Twitter, anybody who attacks the books, he said, you haven't read them. You haven't read them. So,
Okay,
so you have read the books, right?
Yeah. Matt Krause, and he's a Republican out of Fort Worth, and Governor Greg Abbott published this list back in September, October. I didn't contest the books until February 16th. So, okay, September, October, November, December, January, February. That's 6 months from a person who has a higher degree. There it is on the wall. I'm sorry. I can read. I can, group words to make a sentence. I know what I'm doing in the sense of I know what's right and wrong, because you know what? Our God has been given us a great Bible to know what is right and wrong. And he has provided a plumb line to what is right and wrong. And so for me to read some of these books, it was just very eye-opening to the depravity of man. And one of the ones that really caused me to just take a pause and just break down and cry is when they were teaching sexual positions to kindergartners.
What? To kindergartners?
In picture form.
Wait. They did this in school. They showed kids. They were basically teaching our kindergartners the Kama Sutra.
Yeah.
That's unbelievable.
I was like, I just didn't know what to say. I was like, are you serious? And then when it wasn't just sexual positions within a man and a woman, it was a man and a man and a woman and a woman. And I was just like, these kindergartners, they're 5. They are so confused. They should not have this book accessible to our children. It baffles me, and it just shocks me to a point where I'm like, I just don't understand. I just don't know why they would want this, let alone know about this, because when I contested the 282 books, they threw back the paperwork to me and said, oh, well, you didn't fill it out right. I'm like, no, excuse me. I did fill it out right. And you're asking, and again, just like they did at the school board meeting, oh, well, we're going to change the rules because that's how we do it. So they changed the rules. I'm like, excuse you, no, accept the paperwork as is and do the right thing for our kids.
Wow.
Why do you want to see how high Rachel and Paul Elliott are going to jump? No, just do the right thing. Just do the right thing for our kids.
Right, Andy. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, like, I actually asked the sergeant in Frisco, I said, with all this stuff, with all the books that have been coming out that we've, parents have discovered, I'm a homeschooling parent. If I had a library in my home full of these books and the police came to my door and they said, yeah, there's a complaint, you have library books. I said, no, I have a committee and we're just going to reconsider some of these books and they're going to take me to jail, and rightfully so. But yet this school can just legitimately distribute this content. And it just goes to show, like what we were talking about earlier, is the rules are one-sided, and it's just, I mean, I don't know. I'm like Paul. I'm like Paul. I'm like, I'm praying, God, I can't wait for you to make my enemies my footstool.
Right.
Thank you for redeeming my time so that I can be in this fight. And
well, the part that even shocks me is here in McKinney ISD, some of these people, they ran on the platform, oh, I'm a pastor. Or they ran on the platform, oh, I'm staff of a church. And I'm like thinking in my mind, or I own a Christian company that sells chicken. And I'm like, what? I like chicken.
The problem is, and I've been learning a little bit about this, is that the superintendent, they're unionized. Okay. And then all of the school board has to be trained by the school board training, which is from the union. So then they're all, unionized to follow the superintendent's, agenda and whatever else, and vote the way that they want. So the only way for anybody, if they're going to run for school board, is probably you have to de-unionize the board, which is an extremely noble task to take on in the first place. And then you're going to have to say, we're going to get rid of all this curriculum, and we're going to only accept curriculum for like maybe 50 years ago, because that's probably the only kind of curriculum that's kind of still has some purity left to it. And then, you've got to train the boards then to vote not union. I mean, again, it's going to have to, but then I go, you know what? They prohibited the religious teaching in schools and all of that stuff. But the only religion now that's being taught is Satanism.
So that's exactly right. That's what I was going to say. They've
a perverted system.
They have worked so hard to keep God out of the schools, but they've replaced God with a form of secularism and Satanism and hedonism that rises to the level of religion. I mean, this is absolutely a religious right to these people to indoctrinate kids with the LGBTQ stuff and with sexual grooming.
And furthermore, in
McKinney ISD, they do have a satanic club.
I know. I've seen it in other school districts as well, and they're proud about this stuff. And
they are.
Here's the thing, like, as a former LGBT, there comes a point in your life, well, I wouldn't say in my life particularly, but I've met a lot of older LGBT during my time in that lifestyle, because I was 22 when I got saved. So I'm thankful God saved my 20s. Like, God put me in ministry. God totally just, thank you, Jesus. But what I want to say to that is when I was in the lifestyle, there's a lot of the older people that are in the lifestyle. They didn't have kids. So what do they seek to do? They need more affirmation, and the best affirmation that they're going to get, because they've lived with this lie for so long, is to have children also affirm them. And so they will seek positions in their, basically we've got a secular priesthood in the public schools. And I heard it said that way one time, and I was just like floored with that language, because that's essentially what it is. When you have an entire community that believes their lie, that will do it whatever it takes to have their lies codified, they have, and we have gay marriage now and all the things that are trying, and that, we can go back to what was it, Dr. Zelenko, and he said, I don't know if you heard his quote, but he said, it's not the flood of Noah and Sodom and Gomorrah didn't happen because of immorality being in the world. It was for the fact that they codified immorality. And once the nation starts codifying immorality and it starts to affect the children, that is when a nation falls. But I have great hope right now because of Roe v. Wade being overturned. So I think we're on the right path, and I think that we're going to overturn all this other stuff too. So
yes,
Yeah,
that's huge. Go ahead, Rachel. Sorry.
I think these board members need to realize they're being voted for by parents. And my heart goes out to the teachers that are put upon these policies that this administration is putting onto them. They are so stressed. They do not want this stuff. They don't want to be a part of it. Now, I do think that there are some teachers that are really pumping this stuff. There are teachers that are there, but a lot of them in McKinney ISD are some great teachers, and I've been able to experience life with them. And so I definitely don't want to talk down to all of them.
No.
But, one of the things that I think this ISD struggles with is transparency and accountability. And a lot of things are coming out. Skeletons are coming out.
You told me, we had a phone conversation the other day, and you gave me I had to stop you after a half hour of just like a whole litany of things that this school that we're going to get into on, later episodes of this podcast. But, we're kind of running short on time, so we need to wrap it up. But so let's kind of close with a call to action. I think from my end, it's clear to me that there is a lot of, let's say, malfeasance going on. I think misappropriation of public funds by certain people. This witch hunt into Chad Green. I'm not, like I said, I'm not well versed on education law. I'm not well versed on government law, but I'm learning it, and we're going to take these people down. I can already think of several causes of action. So we are, we're raising support for multiple lawsuits, and we'll get a link up. You can actually. I set up a nonprofit, but I couldn't get the link to work for my Give Send Go. So, if you're listening to this and you want to contribute, you can Venmo me at Fired Up TX Lawyer, and we'll put that in the fund as soon as we have the actual fund up. We'll share that link as well.
We need to own McKinney PD and MISD.
Oh yeah, they're all in on it. It's a clear violation of civil rights as far as having people thrown out of the meetings, and then we're looking at different causes of action related to these pornographic books and just public malfeasance and defamation. There's lots of that going on. So that's kind of my call to action. Let's go to Andy. What would you kind of encourage people to? You talked about the labor union stuff. What else would you encourage people to do to stop this evil going on in our schools?
I know that this is a really tough decision for a lot of parents, because it might mean changing your lifestyle a little bit, as far as maybe you take a smaller house or a smaller income. But I'm homeschooling, and I think that as a parent, that is your number. Your children, they're God's children. You are only managers of them for so long, and you only get a certain amount of time with your children. And I think this is just the most, they're so innocent and they're so precious. And they deserve for us as their parents to protect that innocence as much as it depends on us. And I don't want to get emotional, but seriously, I encourage every single parent. You know what? I just learned 5th grade grammar, and I'm still learning it because I can speak. I can even write, but it won't be grammatically correct. And so, you know what? If you're worried about you're not good at this or you're not good at that, well, it just shows you the incompetency of the public school system, because you were probably in the public school system. And if you don't think that you have the competency to teach your fourth grader, your fifth grader, it goes to show you that they didn't really give you an education to begin with, because you should be able to do that. If you truly got an education, then you would be able to teach your fourth grade math, fifth grade grammar, and everything else in between.
Mhm.
But, you know, I think we can see that there is a severe failure in our education system, and it's been happening for decades, to get us compliant to coercion, even raising your hand. You know, that is coercion, to ask to learn. You have to have permission to learn. And then it only treats you as, it was Sam Sorbo. She's amazing. She's a great advocate for homeschooling, home learning. Anyways, I'll keep it short, but she said it this way: if you have to ask, raise your hand to learn, then all you're going to do is, the motto becomes don't ask, because you're going to feel incompetent when you ask that question, especially as a child. You know, don't ask, don't try, and don't think. Just regurgitate the information that we give you.
Mhm.
Wow. So they're not getting an education. And I think every parent needs to come to those terms in the public school system, pull their kids, then the funding, then they'll start to listen, because
Oh,
they
yeah.
won't have,
Yeah.
because you have to have a certain amount of kids in those seats and a certain amount of presence, because they don't like absences and all that stuff. They will start to wake up and listen, and that's when we can flip it. We're not going to be able to do anything with our kids in school in a perverted system. That's just the bottom line. And that may be a hard line for a lot of parents, and it's a lot of sacrifice. I promise your children are worth it. Okay? Your children deserve everything, right? We'd give up anything for our children. We give up our lives. So let's give up the one thing we can. Public schools, you're trash. And until you get the trash out of the public school, you're not going to have my children there. You're going to lose all your funding, and you're going to lose our votes. We're going to start our own conservative school movement. And we won't even call it a school. We'll just, you know, because you have some jurisdiction with the school title. So conservatives, start your own thing. Start co-ops. That's what we need to do. That's my action item.
Amen. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's when they lose all their funding and they don't have their little Mean Girls Club because they don't have any students, they don't have any money.
They don't have any money.
That's when they're going to start listening. So thank you so much. Well, that was very well said. Rachel, how about you?
Show up to the school board meetings. You know, I've been there for over a year now, and there are times that there are only like maybe 10 of us from the public. That's not the case this past time or the previous month, even with that. But show up, vote. You know, our voices are there. And then also volunteer as much as you can into the schools. It's your job, parents. Be there. You know, I love being the room parent. I've been the room parent for 5 years. I think it's a lot of fun to be a part of the Valentine's Day parties and the end of the school year parties, but have a relationship with your teachers. Look through your kids' backpack, look through what they're learning, log in with their logins, see what they're doing, because that is our job. You know, as parents, we have to be watchful and mindful, and then also just be very open conversation with the ISDs. When you see something, say something. Just don't let it go. Talk about it. And then also hire a great attorney like Paul Davis, that way, that's willing to stand up with you, because it is hard to stand. It really is. But courageous is contagious. So keep standing up. And when you get knocked down, that's okay. You know what? You're going to have a great lawyer with you, and he's going to help you stand up even harder and stronger. So.
Awesome.
Amen.
Love it. Well, thank y'all so much for coming on. This was just an incredible show. I wish we didn't have the technical difficulties, but thanks to everybody for watching. And we will have, Rachel, I know we're going to have you back on, because you are just such a wealth of knowledge on the, you know, everything that's going on in these schools. So we're going to talk about what, you know, I was thinking about the construction malfeasance, basically misappropriating funds with these construction projects. We had a student commit suicide. Apparently that was badly mishandled. We have a a homosexual staff member who is coaching football now and has access to the boys' locker room. Lots of, just to name a few. So yeah, so we could talk all night about all the issues with this school board, and this is just one example of one school board. All of these same issues are going on in so many school boards across the country, and we got to expose it, and we got to call it out, and we got to stop it. So thank y'all so much for what you're doing and just for educating our audience. And this was great. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul.
Good night,
I really
Paul.
appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.